Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad to have you back this week. This is week 6, mindful eating. We're going to focus on the decision point, how do I eat? We're also going to cover the essentials of strength training and protein. So last week we talked about what do I eat? Remember the 3 questions we discussed asking ourselves after, of course, am I hungry? And those questions were to help us determine what to eat. And they were, what do I want? What do I need? And what do I have? So those 3 questions will help guide us in making the perfect food choice for us at any given time. So I hope you've had some valuable experiences this week using this new approach that we talked about last week. So remember, this is very much an inside-out approach, an inside job, if you will. We've been taught for so long to look for external measures for success, measurements on the scale, what our weight is, clothing size, lab numbers, and so on. And this can really be challenging because this concept of mindfulness and awareness is very much a centered internal approach. This is really about getting in tune with the information and wisdom that's always within you. You weren't born with printouts of numbers and measurements, but you were born with the instinctive ability to listen to your body's needs and messages. So this process is really kind of about re-engaging and listening to and trusting these things. I encourage you to continue to remind yourself about the benefits of the skills or strategies that you're now using to try to get back in touch with your instinctive self. I know you're all at a different place along this journey, but you're all on it nevertheless, learning new things and hopefully gaining some confidence in your ability to trust yourself again. Don't let the scale, please, or some other external measure tell you how you're feeling during this process. As a matter of fact, I really continue to encourage you to not weigh yourself during this process. Once again, this is about finding something that's actually sustainable. We've all had the experience during one diet or another that we could do it for a little while, but it's just not sustainable. So I hope that this makes sense. So let's go ahead and move into our session for today. Today in our Think section, we're going to work on how do I eat, and experiment a little bit with our mindful eating. So I want to use the lessons we learned in the last 5 weeks, and I think you'll really see how those lessons are going to apply in this situation. But for many people, this pulls a lot of things together for them. The experience of eating mindfully, and not just the experience of smelling and tasting food, but really the whole decision-making process. Okay, so how many of you love to eat? Right? How many of you think that you eat in a way that shows that you love to eat? See, many people say they love food, but they don't actually eat in a way that shows they do. They may eat very quickly, barely noticing what they're eating, or they eat while they're watching TV, reading the paper, driving, working, on their phone. This really leads to mindless or unconscious eating. So let's first think about maybe some of the things, what distracts you when you're eating. Think about what other things you might be trying to do at the same time as eating. How about TV or driving, working, maybe engaging with other people. I'm sure you can think of tons more things that actually distract you while you're eating. And all right, now that we have all these kind of distractions that we've talked about, so what happens? What happens then when you're doing all these things and you become distracted while you're eating? So eating when we're distracted winds up leading to all kinds of negative consequences. All kinds of things that we didn't actually intend, like eating too much, or not noticing until the food's gone, not actually tasting the food, or realizing that we're already full. Many of us are really busy doing too many things all at once, and that includes eating. We say we love food, but we sure don't act like it, do we? We don't treat our food as if it's very important to us, even though we might think about it and talk about it all the time, except when we're eating, and then we're thinking about or talking about or doing something else. Then, as a result, all of this pleasure that you might have been anticipating or expecting, you're not getting. You're not getting it at all. Why do you think that is? Well, for one thing, the idea of multitasking is quite popular, but it's really not very effective. While most of us are certainly very capable, and we practice this many times a day, of doing more than one thing at a time, your brain really can only focus on one thing at a time. So think about this. If you're eating, and this is something you've done thousands and thousands of times, but you're watching maybe a brand new episode of your favorite TV show, where's your attention? I mean, really, you don't have to think about eating at all. You've done it so many times, your brain's kind of on autopilot for that. But now the TV show, that's another story because it's all new and requires your full attention. So becoming mindful really brings greater satisfaction to eating and actually ultimately to other activities in your life. American culture really values food, but not the activity of eating. Whereas many European cultures, on the other hand, put a great emphasis on the experience of eating, as well as on the quality and freshness of the food. So this is an important lesson. We need to learn to value the activity of eating, or in other words, to love what you eat. So how do you love what you eat? How might mindful eating actually help you with that? Well, eating mindfully, even the same foods that you're normally eating, when eaten mindfully, will give you a completely different experience from what you've had in the past. It'll increase your enjoyment of food. It increases the pleasure and satisfaction you might get from eating. It allows you to tune into your hunger and fullness cues, which then makes it easier to stop at a comfortable level of satisfaction instead of, feeling stuffed and miserable. And then this then also leads into decreasing, as a result, the amount of food that you eat. And then it helps you notice how certain foods and situations affect you. Sometimes we check out in order to eat more food than we really need. Or we check out so we don't have to pay attention to what's really going on. And then as a result, we kind of get to the end of the meal and we feel stuffed, but strangely unsatisfied because most of what we consumed we weren't actually present for. See, mindful eating is eating with intention and attention. Intention and attention. So what does this mean? Well, mindful eating is eating with intention. That means that I am purposeful when I eat. It means I have a specific or definite reason or purpose for eating. It might mean I'm eating because I'm hungry and trying to fuel my body. It might be I might be eating to meet my body's needs, whether, for nutrition or for health reasons, or maybe for pleasure. And remember, pleasure, we discussed before, is a legitimate need. And eating with intention is also eating with the goal of feeling better, or the intention of feeling better when I'm done than I did when I started. So let's think about that one more time. Eating with the intention of feeling better when I'm done than I did when I started. How often do you eat and feel worse when you're done than you did before you even started? See, when you eat with the intention of feeling better, you're more likely to eat because you're hungry. You're more likely to choose foods that leave you feeling good, or at least an amount that's more likely to leave you feeling good. You're more likely to notice and enjoy and savor the food you're eating, and more likely to stop at a point where you're still feeling great in your own body. Well, so how does all that happen? Well, that's eating with attention. Eating with full attention to the activity of eating. That might mean eliminating or minimizing your distractions, turning off the TV, not eating while you're driving or while you're working or reading or something like that. It means turning into the ambiance, the flavors, smells, temperature, and texture of the food. Even the people in the room, but maybe alternating between paying full attention to the conversation and then full attention to the bites of food. Eating with attention is also about listening to your body's cues of hunger and fullness. So it's about not just tuning into the experience of the food, but also about how my body is responding to that food. So we're going to use our mindful eating cycle, and we're going to work our way together through a mindful eating experience. And at some point here, not right now, but at some point here, we're actually going to eat the food that you brought to this call and experience the full impact of eating with intention and attention. So let's go back to the mindful eating cycle. And if you need to stand up and do our clock exercise, go ahead. So it's why do I eat? When do I eat? What do I eat? How do I eat? How much do I eat? And where do I invest my energy? So let's start with why, because everything starts with why. Why are we eating? Why are we eating tonight? What is this exercise, this eating experience about? Or why might we eat? This experience is about not just hunger and taste, it's about learning. It's about kind of having a new experience, about learning mindfulness. And because we're learning, this will take a little longer than you're normally used to. So hopefully you won't get frustrated by the process. Just take a deep breath and remember this is about learning. So the idea of eating mindfully is really a complex situation that requires our full intention and attention. So starting with why we eat, maybe one of the reasons is that we're trying to fuel our bodies. Maybe it's about nutrition. And sometimes it's more about fuel and nutrition than it is about pleasure. I personally focus, for example, like more effort on my breakfast meal around the need for fuel and nutrition to get my day started well. I normally eat breakfast alone because everyone in my house is kind of on a different morning schedule. So then honestly, I'm more likely to think about eating for pleasure, maybe around dinner time when I'm with the family and I'm more relaxed at the end of the day. But if you're eating sometimes primarily for pleasure, doesn't it make sense to eat in such a way as to get full pleasure from the eating? Like not sitting in front of the TV or anything like that, but to actually eat in a way that satisfies the need for that pleasure. Or maybe it's a social occasion. But remember, if we're eating in a social occasion, then the real purpose is actually to be social. So maybe we can alternate attention between eating and conversation. Perhaps there's an emotional trigger that's affecting you. And then, of course, another reason why is to feel better when you're done than you did when you started. So in addition to all that, today we're eating to learn about mindfulness. So I'm kind of deconstructing the process and we'll slow things down a bit. It might seem a bit mechanical to some of you, but we're going to walk through the steps carefully so you can learn how to eat with intention and attention. You can eat mindfully, really, even if you only have a 5 or 10-minute snack or a short lunch break. It's really still possible to eat mindfully. So the next step in the eating cycle is when. When do I feel like eating? So the first question is to start where we always start. Whenever you have an urge to eat, ask yourself, am I hungry? Then a follow-up question is, how hungry am I? And give yourself a hunger and fullness number. And for some of you, given this is it being held in the evening, some of you might have had dinner a little while ago, and so it's possible that you might be a little full right now. And then think about how full do I want to be at the end of eating. Let's take a quick moment. We're going to do a body, mind, heart scan that we learned in workshop 2 and that we practiced in workshop 3. And I really hope you guys have still been practicing it since then. So if you would, please put down your pencils and paper, pens, or whatever you're doing with your hands and just sit back in your chair for a minute. We're going to do a short scan to tune into what's going on in our body right now. So first, close your eyes if you can. Take a deep breath. And exhale. Take another big, deep breath in. And exhale. Focusing on your breath is one of the best ways to become aware of the present, because you can't breathe in the past and you can't breathe in the future. You can only breathe right now. A single deep breath will take you right here and right now. It allows you to arrive at this experience, letting go of the past and forgetting about the future for a minute. It's a great way to help us get calm and centered. Now tune into your body. Notice your chair, pressing on your thighs, pressing on your back, holding you up. Now scanning from head to toe, notice whatever's there right now. I'm not going to guide you step by step, but just take a moment to check in. If it helps, you can picture like a circle or a hula hoop traveling down your body. And just take note about each thing that you notice. Now, take your right hand and make a light fist and place it right over your stomach, right below your breastbone. Turn all of your attention right there, right to your stomach, and see what you feel. Notice what you feel. Are you aware of any growling, any hunger pangs, emptiness or hollowness? Maybe you're aware of food present, a little stretched. Now look for any other signs of hunger or fullness. Maybe you feel shaky or low energy, or maybe it's not hunger that's causing the low energy, but maybe you're tired. Maybe you ate already, maybe too much, and you feel tired because your body's busy digesting. Maybe you feel sleepy, and you can just stand up for your scan if you'd like. What's your hunger and fullness number? Now pay attention to your mind. What thoughts are you aware of? Are you excited or anxious about this? Are you frustrated by this? Are you curious? Are you thinking about the food that you have? There's no judgment. Just notice the thoughts you're experiencing right now. Now tune into your feelings. What are you experiencing? Are you feeling relaxed? Are you feeling tense? Do you have any jittery feelings of nervousness or excitement? What are you feeling? Now I want you to ask yourself, what do I want? What do I want to eat? What am I hungry for? What would taste good? What am I in the mood for? What do you need to eat? What does your body need? What have you eaten today? What health concerns or conditions are you paying attention to? What do you have? What did you bring to the call? Or do you have access to other food if you chose something else during this process right now? What are your options? Is there something that would be the perfect balance between what you want and what you need? Now, it's certainly possible that the answers to these questions might be influenced right now by what you brought with you to the call. And now last, I want you to ask yourself, how do I want to feel at the end of this eating experience? How do I want to feel? How do you want to feel? What do you want your hunger and fullness number to be? How do you want to feel energetically? How do you want to feel emotionally? Set your intention for how you want to feel at the end of this eating experience. Okay, take another deep breath in and exhale. And when you're ready, open your eyes. And if you need to stand up and shake off and wake up if you need to, and let's come into this present moment and work our way around the mindful eating cycle. So we spent time during that scan thinking about what we were hungry for. For most people, closing your eyes really is helpful in helping you tune into what you're really hungry for and helps eliminate influences from what we might see. Most of us are food suggestible, so trying to take the sight of food out of the equation helps you determine what you really want. And don't forget about what do I need. Not every eating experience is going to be about what you need. Sometimes it's more one than the other. And now for many of you, if not all of you, in this situation, you brought food to the call and that might be your only option. That happens a lot in real life, right? It happens a lot that what we want and what we need don't really seem to match up with what we have available. So we have to learn to be flexible enough and trust that sometime in the near future, we'll have the opportunity to eat what we want and what we're looking for, or what we feel like we need. Sometimes that's just the way it is. So how, in this situation, you brought food to the call, but in most situations, the how kind of needs to incorporate a little bit of how much. We need to know what our intention is, how we want to feel at the end of eating. We need to know how hungry we are. And that can really be helpful in deciding how much we want to eat. So even though how much do I eat is a step away in the cycle, you have to serve yourself the amount of food you think you'll need to reach your intended level of fullness. So this does take some practice and experience. And with experience, mindfulness really does become more natural. At first, really don't be surprised if you overestimate how much food you need. A lot of us are used to eating however much we're given, or we're used to feeling, pretty full when we're done eating. So at first, it might be that you order too much, eat too much, or serve yourself too much. And we'll talk about that in a minute. You could learn from that. So you can estimate how much food you'll need to eat for the level of fullness you're aiming for. So prepare, serve or order that amount of food that you're estimating. If someone else has served your food, or if you may have served yourself too much, visually determine how much food you think you'll need, then move or remove the excess. Like at a restaurant, for example, go ahead and ask for a to-go container before you start eating. Now, I also recommend that you do this right now. If it's to divide the food that you brought in half, like physically divide it in half. Now, we're not dividing it in half because that's all you get to eat. We're dividing it in half because we're creating what we're going to call a speed bump. So whatever you have in front of you, divide it in half, break it in half, cut it in half, or if you have something that can't, like soup or something like that, just make a mental division in your bowl or your plate or something. The speed bump is really helpful in slowing you down and reminding you to stay mindful. See, we usually all start out for the first few bites doing, quote, well, and really paying attention and so on. But as soon as we actually kind of get into the act of eating, it's possible that we're going to slip into old habits because those are what's natural and comfortable. And we might start to eat mindlessly again. So the speed bump literally slows us down. Now, I also recommend that you actually stop when you reach that point or that speed bump for a full 2 minutes and check back in with yourself again. So now we're going to shift attention. How we eat by paying attention. This is about first creating a pleasant environment. If there's too much noise or fighting or anything like that in the background, it can really have an effect on our eating. In situations where you have no control over the environment, however, the best thing you can try to do is just take a deep breath and notice that the environment might actually have an effect on you. See, when you don't notice something is affecting you, it usually has a much greater impact. Try to minimize distractions. Put your cell phone away for 15 minutes. Turn the TV off for that short amount of time. Don't drive, don't work, or read. See, our culture, again, is so focused on always doing more than one thing that we don't give ourselves the pleasure of doing just one thing with full attention at a time. And then we wind up eating too much while we're distracted, and we don't get the most out of that experience. Calm yourself before eating and try to keep yourself calm. Be aware of any tension, anxiety, or excitement that you're feeling, since this will affect how you eat. If you're stressed, rushing, or excited about eating, you're more likely to eat too quickly or in a frenzied manner. If that's the case, postpone eating for a little while if you can. Strive to maintain that calm feeling throughout the meal by avoiding difficult conversations or confrontations. I also personally think that sitting down is really valuable and important for eating. If you eat while you're standing at the refrigerator or hovering over the sink, it's really much harder to pay full attention and it causes us to eat much faster. When we're standing, we're just much more likely to just keep shoveling rather than enjoying. So maybe consider having only 1 or 2 rooms in your house that you eat in, and then sit down at a table. I'm going to pause just real quick here and add something else that some of you may be thinking. Now, some people watch TV or read while they're eating to keep themselves company while they eat alone. Likewise, you are maybe sometimes in situations where you're doing something else while eating, like listening to me talk. It is possible to eat while you're doing other things, but really to do that, you need to fully shift your attention back and forth between the activities. And that takes some practice. Okay, back to how. So center yourself. Let's take a few deep breaths. And take one more. Now, get your food. If it's not already there with you, don't eat it yet. Don't taste it yet. Start just by looking at your food. Really examine your food. Pick it up. Turn it over. Obviously, if you can, depending on what you have. Look at this food as if it's the very first time you've ever seen it. With the beginner's mind, notice. Appreciate the appearance, the aromas, the colors and textures. Allow yourself to be interested in what this food looks like and see if you notice things that maybe you've never even noticed before. Now, as you look at it, it might jump out at you that there's a particular area or piece or flavor or something that you're really wanting. Kind of depends on the food. If you have something that's the same all the way through, it may not matter, but it could be that you have something in front of you where one bite looks the best, the one you want the most. If you save the best for last, then you're much more likely to eat all the food and then still eat the best part because that's the part you were looking forward to. Your taste buds won't be functioning as well at the end, and you may not even be hungry anymore, but you'll still eat it. Eat the bite you want the most first, and then the next bites you want until you're ready to move on to something else. Just be cautious about saving the best for last because that does usually backfire. Now we're getting ready to taste our food, but don't put food in your mouth yet. I want you to break off or get a piece in your hand or on your fork or spoon. And I'd like you to get a tiny amount, not minuscule, but a small bite. And as you bring that bite up to your mouth, I want you to take a moment to really smell that food. Don't put it in your mouth yet. Just notice the aromas. Notice all of the different sensations that you might get in your nose. This is important because on our tongue, we only really register 5 basic tastes: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami, which means savory. Those 5 tastes are the only things you taste on your tongue. Everything else that differentiates one food from another comes from the aroma of that food. So if you don't take time to smell your food, you're missing a great deal of the experience. That's also why taking small bites works better. If you have a big bite, then a lot of the food winds up on the roof of your mouth and the sides of your mouth and your teeth. And just a small amount winds up coming into contact with your tongue where you register those tastes. And if you also have a large bite, it might potentially block the passage of those aromas up through the back of your nose. And if you can't smell the food as you eat, you can't taste it as much. So go ahead, I'll be quiet for a moment and bring the food up to your mouth. Smell it again and put a little bit in your mouth. And I want you to pay full attention to the party going on your tongue right now. Maybe you notice the texture of the food on your tongue. Maybe you roll it around and notice the different sides of it. And if you can notice the different flavors on different areas of your tongue, it's pretty subtle. Maybe you want to chew it or crunch it. Does the flavor change as you bite it? Does the flavor change as it warms up in your mouth? Moving it around until you're totally tired of that bite. It seems it's been completely experienced. There's nothing more to notice about this bite. And then when you're ready, go ahead and swallow and wait. Now, I want you to notice whether you had already picked up your fork, preparing your next bite, or had your next bite in your hand ready to go. Notice whether you were compelled to put it in your mouth immediately after you swallowed. So this is a habit most of us have gotten into, but remember, we really can only focus on one thing at a time. So if you put food in your mouth and then immediately start assembling the next bite, where's your attention? Which forkful are you paying attention to? The one in your mouth? The one you're loading, right? We make eating this mechanical experience. We're so focused the entire time on the next bite, the next bite, the next bite, that we don't really notice the one that we're actually chewing. So where's our attention? It's always on the next bite, never on the one that we're on now. And when we get to that next bite, we're not paying attention to it anymore because now we're focused on the one after that. So when are we done? Well, when there are no more bites left to load on the fork. So eating isn't about the food at all, but it's about the mechanical process. It's hard to fully enjoy what's in your mouth if you're focused on the next bite. Besides, you'll keep eating if you're always focused on the next bite, not the one you have now. So let's go ahead and take another bite, and I'll be quiet again. Remember to notice and savor the aromas, taste, and textures. Experiencing that bite fully. Paying attention. Notice if you like it. Do you like what you're tasting? Does it taste as good as you expected it to or wanted it to? Notice that. Sometimes we eat things we don't even like, and we eat them simply because we have them, or we think we like them, but we never really taste them when we're eating in our normally quick, rushed manner. If the food doesn't taste as good as you thought it would, or wanted it to, stop and choose something else if possible. If you really like it, then decide this is a food you want to enjoy on a regular basis with this level of attention. And when you're ready, swallow. Now with our next bite, I want you to pay attention to the physical mechanics. Pay attention to how effortlessly your hand works with the utensils, the food, how easily your hand moves towards your mouth and your mouth opens. I want you to notice the weight of the food on your tongue, how naturally you move the food around in your mouth, and that your saliva naturally occurs to start breaking down that food. And when you're ready and you swallow that bite of food, I want you to notice that you have to consciously swallow. And then at some point after that, you no longer have to think about it, and your body takes it naturally from there. It causes that food to go straight down your esophagus and drop right into your stomach and take up a little bit of space in your stomach. Now at this point, I'm going to suggest that we pause from the eating for a little bit. We've had at least 3 bites, maybe more if you slipped 1 or 2 in there, and that's fine. I can't see what you brought. Maybe you brought a little, maybe you brought a lot, but let's just pause for a couple of moments and allow that experience to settle in. And allow our bodies to notice if there's any fullness from those 3 bites. They might have been too little to have moved you along on the hunger and fullness scale and make a big impact, but it could have taken you maybe from a 4 to a 5 or from a 5 to a 6. Sometimes it only takes a few bites to take you from a hunger level to a fullness level. This pause point kind of allows us to check back in and allows us to recognize if we're enjoying that food. It gives you a chance to tune into your stomach and reassess your hunger and fullness level. And once you know where you are in your new hunger and fullness scale, it allows the opportunity to determine how much more food it'll take to kind of bring you to a comfortable level of fullness, or the level that you set your intention for. You might be feeling anxious. Stopping eating might be very unfamiliar or feels uncomfortable to you, and that's okay. Most new things do feel uncomfortable to us at first. Just take a couple of deep breaths and tell yourself that you can eat it again. You can eat the rest of it later. You can have it tomorrow. You can eat it for every meal from here on out if you want to. Maybe you need to tell yourself, it's just food. It's just food. And when you're able to calm yourself and become aware that that angst or excitement about the food is there, kind of level it off a little bit. Take it down a notch instead of being overwhelmed or overly excited by it. So we're going to talk for a minute about how much. And again, I'd like you to wait for another minute or two before you get back to your eating. One of the things people will notice as they begin to eat more mindfully is that your taste buds actually become less sensitive as you eat. And as your hunger diminishes, your taste buds aren't going to notice as much of the food. And you'll notice the food doesn't taste as good as it did at the beginning. This might not seem true to you at first, but often people will realize that this to be true after they've practiced eating with more attention more often. And you could be eating a memory. You might remember what it tasted like. You might want it to taste that good again, but it won't taste that good again until you're hungry again. So learning that as much as you might feel like you want to keep eating, if you were to stop right now, you might actually have food left over for tomorrow or for when you're hungry again, even if it's for a snack in a couple of hours. And you can experience how wonderful it tastes all over again. So if you happen to by any chance notice that you're satisfied, how can you signal to yourself that you're finished? On a regular basis, think about this a minute. How can you show yourself and potentially others that you're done? Well, some things might be push your plate away. A lot of people suggest covering with a napkin or get up and leave the table. Or some people actually have to just throw it away because they are concerned that they're going to come back to it mindlessly. So they have to just take it out of their sight. So have a strategy for yourself and others that shows you're done. This can really be helpful. Be aware of the tendency to pick at food left on the table or your plate and to nibble the leftovers while you're cleaning up. Now, if you'd like to continue eating whatever you brought, then I'm going to have you practice eating and tuning into the conversation. Or if you're eating, notice how much harder it is to tune into the conversation. See if you can practice the steps we talked about, even though we're moving on to something else. Remember, in real life, in social situations, the conversation might be continuing, and you might need to intentionally focus on your food for a few moments, even while other people are chit-chatting. All right, so the last step in the mindful eating cycle is, where do I invest my energy? Part of this is about checking back in and noticing where my hunger and fullness levels are after I finished eating. Also noticing and asking myself, how do I feel? Did I reach the level of fullness I set my intention for? And if not, why not? This is a learning opportunity. Did I get distracted? Did I not have enough food? Did I have too much food? Did I hit the level I intended? And then, do I feel better than I did before I started eating? If you follow your eating with a pleasant activity, I'll tell you then it's much easier to stop eating. If your plan is, as soon as I'm done eating, then I'm going to go back to work or do the laundry or pay the bills. If that's your plan, it's going to be much harder for you to stop eating. you will procrastinate that next activity by continuing to eat. So plan something that's pleasant. Maybe reading a chapter in a new book you got, calling a friend, playing a game on your phone. Maybe one of the activities that you used to do while you were eating, you can save until after you're done eating. Give yourself another reason to stop so you have something to look forward to. And don't forget to reassess your hunger and fullness levels like 20 or 30 minutes later after you've eaten, because most of us know we'll be more full after we eat. And this will help you kind of gauge what to do in the future. So if you were to stop eating when you feel like you're at a 5, and then 20 minutes later you feel like you're at like an 8, this might help you in the future to decide what your intention is when you start eating, and help you learn how long it takes you to get to the feeling that you were looking for. So you can teach this mindfulness process or experience that we did to a friend, or do it yourself again if you can stand it. But there will come a point where it will annoy you to be rushed through your eating, or it'll bother you if you have to eat while you're standing up or with a lot of commotion going on. You'll find you really, really enjoy eating with intention and attention. So what other areas in your life are you mindless? Where else are you fast, and where are you distracted? What about family, work, maybe when you're driving, maybe even when you're on a vacation? See, everything in our life becomes more enjoyable when we pay it full attention. That's another piece of kind of homework for you this week, is to notice if you become distracted doing other things. Notice if you check out of a conversation, check out while you're driving. Notice how often we're not really present in the moment in our lives. Practice figuratively and literally setting your fork down. Enjoying the bite in your mouth right now, enjoying what's happening right now, the conversation you're having, that walk you're taking, the environment that's around you. Whatever it is, pay full attention and experience it with that beginner's mind as if you've never experienced it before. And just see if it doesn't bring a little bit more joy and pleasure to everything. All right, let's shift into nourish. We're going to talk about protein power. So most of you know protein is one of the major macronutrients, just like carbohydrates and fats, which we've already talked about in previous workshops. And protein has a few extra special things about it that I want to talk about that affects our hunger and fullness. We already know that eating enough protein is vital for optimal health. Protein is found in every cell in your body and plays a role in basic bodily functions, from walking to digesting food. So what are some of the other roles protein plays in your body? Well, it helps build, repair, and maintain organ and muscle tissue. It helps us maintain healthy skin and hair. It's important in the production of enzymes and hormones. It's also critical for fluid and acid-base balance. It's important for our immune system and for blood clotting. It's also an important energy source, providing 4 calories of energy per gram. Although, as we talked about last week, ideally carbohydrate and fat are used for your energy needs, sparing protein to be used for your body's vital functions that we just mentioned. Your body preferentially uses carbs for energy, but it can use protein if and when needed. The other important thing about protein, which most of you probably already noticed, is that when you include protein in your meal, you may feel a greater level of satiety. It helps keep you feeling full, or rather satiated, for longer. So what is a protein? Well, some of this is maybe basic information to you, and you might already know this, or maybe you don't, and maybe you don't care, and that's fine. Protein is basically composed of amino acids, and amino acids are like building blocks. There are 20 of them. 9 of them are essential, which means that your body cannot make these. They have to be consumed through food. And 11 of them are non-essential, which means your body does make these. So kind of like the letters of the alphabet. They're arranged in different orders to make or spell out, if you will, the various proteins that have different functions in the body. A complete protein means that that particular protein contains all 20 amino acids. So when you eat a food that's considered a complete protein, it has all 9 essential and 11 non-essential present. And there are really 2 sources of complete proteins. Animal protein sources, such as meat, poultry, fish, eggs, dairy products, and plant sources such as soybeans and quinoa. These 2 do contain all of the essential amino acids. But let's talk a little bit about some plant sources of protein. So other than soy and quinoa, which all the other plant sources contain a variety of amino acids. So you have to eat a balance and a variety of plant sources in order to obtain all of the amino acids. So grains, beans, lentils, nuts, and seeds contain various essential amino acids. So by eating a variety of these foods, you can consume all of the amino acids necessary to make the proteins your body needs. Foods you see frequently paired together in order to complete the protein profile is like beans and rice, or something of this combination. Our bodies thrive because in that case, the beans provide some of the amino acids and the rice provides the rest of them. And together they provide all of the amino acids that you need. You don't have to have all of those at the same meal. Your body will temporarily hang on to some of those essential amino acids and wait for the other ones to show up to combine them to create the proteins that you need. So how much does your body need? Well, you can calculate this if you want. It isn't really necessary to calculate it, but if you're curious whether you're getting enough protein, it's possible to go ahead and calculate. A registered dietitian can help determine your needs if you have kidney disease or some other reason to be paying close attention medically. Or, people who compete at bodybuilding shows calculate their protein intake to have a sense of where they are or where they might need to go with regards to their protein intake. Probably most people consume more protein than they realize when you start to consider protein that's in our plant sources and other places you don't think about it. So take a look at your own diet, and you might want to take the time to notice if the foods you're eating are complete proteins, or if there's enough variety to make complete proteins. Again, this isn't necessary for you to do, but if you're curious, you have the information. So the general recommended intake guideline, if you wanted to do the calculation, is 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So in order to calculate your weight in kilograms, you need to know that 1 pound is equivalent to 2.2 kilograms. Daily protein intake should be anywhere between 10 and 35% of total daily calories, depending on your goals and what you're shooting for. Now, meeting your daily recommendation for protein is not usually difficult. Remember, eating a specific amount of protein per day is not necessarily the goal here. This calculation just gives you an idea of how much protein will meet the average person's daily needs based on their weight to help you in the process of selecting food. We always use the all foods fit approach, using the principles of balance, variety, and moderation. So if you're not going to weigh and calculate the numbers all the time, how can you get balance, variety, and moderation in your life? Well, eating too much of any one nutrient leads to monotony and boredom and can cause nutrient deficiencies in the long run. So, the concept of some of the high protein diets, no carbs, have some issues with them. But most people aren't going to stay on them and stay with them for long enough to do any long-term harm. But really, more importantly, when we aren't eating a variety of foods, we get bored with our foods, and we're likely to not be filling in the gaps from a nutrient standpoint. Eating protein throughout the day at meals and stacks may give you greater satiety, so you don't get hungry as often, so keep that in mind. And then as a result, because of that, you may eat less food and wind up with more stable blood sugars. Eating a variety of protein sources improves your intake of the amino acids your body needs, especially if you don't eat animal or soy sources on a regular basis. Protein-containing foods also provide other nutrients. For example, dairy has calcium, beef has iron, pork contains niacin, and fish contains omega-3s, which we talked about last week. Eating a variety of protein sources does ultimately provide a variety of nutrients. Now, because animal sources of protein may also contain saturated fat, selection and trimming moderation are important here for cardiovascular health. Moderation can be important with protein because sometimes portion size is also an issue. It's not really a matter of more is better, and if a little is good, a lot must be great. Protein intake, or really rather any nutrient, significantly above the general recommendation may have harmful effects on the body, not typically in the short run, but in the long run. Then when your body gets more protein than it needs to perform its daily functions, the extra amino acids can't be retained for later use. So the proteins are broken down for energy, and any excess energy, like with any other, is stored as body fat, just like with an excess of any other nutrient. Nitrogen is a natural byproduct from the digestion and metabolism of protein, and is removed from the body by the kidneys and excreted in the urine. So depending on the amount of extra protein, this can significantly increase the workload of the kidneys, and dehydration certainly makes this condition worse. And of course, practice moderation with even nuts and nut butters, because as we talked about, there are higher calories in these because of the fat content. But of course, balance, variety, and moderation will pretty much take care of any concerns you have with your nutrient intake if you're practicing that. All right, last shift. And again, this should be, I think, relatively short, but we're going to talk about live, increase your strength. Strength training and resistance training is any activity that requires a specific muscle group to work harder than it's used to. And then when repeated over time, those muscles will become stronger and able to handle that additional challenge. So let's think about what are some types of strength training activities. Well, most people usually right away think about lifting weights or using resistance type of exercise machines. Maybe doing strength exercises using a stability ball. The ball provides a lot of great support and builds core strength at the same time. Lifting your own body weight, as in sit-ups or push-ups. Pushing against an immobile object. And then moving against the resistance of like rubber tubing or bands. So let's talk a minute about how strength training really works. So what you have here on your screen is kind of what a cartoon muscle fiber might look like. So when you push your muscles beyond their normal workload, what happens is that during that strength training work, it works by microscopically damaging the muscle tissue. And I know this sounds terrible, but it's really not. And then what happens is during the following 24 to 48 hours, the body rebuilds the damaged tissue, making the muscle fibers larger and stronger. And then over time, this whole process increases your strength and you're able to build or maintain your muscle mass. So what bother? I mean, what are some of the benefits of strength training? Well, it improves your function in your daily life. It decreases your risk of injury. It boosts your metabolism. See, muscle burns a lot more calories. Not only do you burn calories during the exercise, but you burn calories even while you're resting. It improves your body composition by increasing your muscle mass and decreasing your body fat, giving you ultimately a leaner and longer look to the body. It helps minimize the loss of lean tissue, or muscle mass, if you will, while you're losing weight. It also helps prevent age-related loss of muscle mass and strength. It improves glucose metabolism. It improves blood pressure. It improves cholesterol levels. It prevents osteoporosis by increasing bone mineral density. It eases pain from arthritis. It decreases lower back pain by increasing core strength. Clearly, there are so many reasons that you might if you're not currently, you might want to give this a shot. In your book, you will find simple strength training instructions if you are just getting started. Obviously, I would recommend, if you need to consult with your physician prior to beginning an exercise program. And I would highly recommend, and even for people that have been doing strength training for a while, to consider seeking the advice of an exercise professional or a personal trainer, because following proper technique and form will absolutely decrease the chance of injury and maximize your results. It's amazing how with a very knowledgeable trainer, just slight variations to your body movement will kind of change the result of that exercise for you, and you might not be aware of those little changes that need to be made in your form. So there are tons of ways to build strength. This is just have information in your book here with regards to, maybe some of those ideas that you could look into. So as you begin to increase your physical activity in your daily life, your body becomes more physically fit, right? And once again, you might be wanting to use a more structured program. So we continue to encourage you to use the FIT formula. And remember, this stands for frequency, intensity, time, and type. And it's also relative for strength training. So maybe what's a FIT prescription for strength training? Well, strength training has two different components. It has muscle strength, which is the ability to exert maximal force for a brief period of time. For example, lifting a heavy object one time, like lifting a suitcase into an overhead bin. And then it also has muscle endurance, which is the ability to do many repetitions or to carry a weight for an extended period of time. So either lifting a small object multiple times or carrying a duffel bag through the airport. So what's a frequency? Well, benefits occur with strength training with just 2 to 3 times per week. So keep in mind that you should allow like 48 hours between working a specific muscle group again. Then the intensity, you want to try to shoot for 2 to 3 sets of 8 to 20 repetitions for each exercise. If you can't do 8 repetitions, the weight's too heavy. And if you can do more than 20, the weight's too light. So you have to try to gauge that and see what the right amount of resistance is for you. Usually your training sessions could take somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes if you're just starting out, 30 to 45 minutes or 30 to 60 minutes if you are more on the bodybuilding side of it. You'll have more time there. And then type, and those are some of the things that we listed previously that are also available in your book to check out. So in your workbook, you want to write your own prescription. Write your own strength training prescription for this week using the FIT principles. Be specific again, and don't forget to include your frequency, like how often are you going to do this, which days and what times. How much effort are you going to give? How long are you going to try the exercise? 20 minutes, 30 minutes, what are you going to do? And then what types of activities are you going to do? And then be sure to record your activities in your journal each day. So here we are. We're at the workshop wrap up. And what have you learned today? What were your ahas? Well, we covered a couple things here. We went through our mindful eating experience, and I would highly, highly encourage you to do that more than once. We learned about just now the benefits and techniques for strength training. We learned about the role of protein in the body. And like every time, we continue to learn the importance and techniques for achieving balance, variety, and moderation when eating. And in this case, we applied it to proteins. So your action plan this week, as per usual, is to read the next set of chapters, which is chapter 6, 14, and 22 in your book, and to use chapter 6 in your awareness journal. Just spend some time identifying your eating habits that might interfere with your ability to be mindful, and then decide what you might be able to do differently. Again, practice that mindful eating several times this week by walking through the strategy step by step. Try strength training exercise 2 times this week if you're not already doing this. And again, only if you're curious, feel free to calculate your protein needs and then take a look and see whether or not you might be meeting those every day. And then pay attention to how protein might affect your hunger and fullness levels. So next week, we are going to explore how much food you need, and we're going to talk about what to do when you eat too much. We'll also discuss how to stay motivated and get optimal benefit from your physical activity. And then we'll have a brief discussion on micronutrients and nutrition labels. So have an amazing week, and I will talk to you next week.